Hello and welcome to Weekly News Highlights. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. Let's recap the week with keywords that made headlines this week. President Yoon Suk-yeol was released from custody on Friday after Seoul Central District Court accepted Yoon's request to cancel his detention, which he had called illegal. U.S. tariff pressure continued this week, even on South Korea, with Trump accusing Seoul of having an average tariff that is 4 times higher than Washington's. South Korean authorities rejected the accusation. The U.S. and Ukraine are looking to return to negotiations over a much-debated minerals deal after the leaders of the two sides' no-deal summit last week. A Seoul court on Friday accepted President Yoon Suk-yeol's request to cancel his detention over his botched martial law order, releasing him from custody after just 50 days. Our Shin Ha-young leads us this weekend.
President Yoon Suk-yeol, who has been indicted and detained on charges of leading an insurrection through his brief imposition of martial law, is expected to be released from custody for the duration of his criminal trial. This comes after the Seoul Central District Court accepted on Friday Yoon's request to cancel his detention. Earlier last month, Yoon's legal team asked the court to cancel his detention and release the president, arguing that prosecutors indicted him a day after the detention period expired on January 25th, making it illegal. The court clarified that Yoon's January 26th indictment, which extended his detention, occurred hours after the initial detention period had already ended. It pointed to the prosecution's way of calculating the detention period, ruling that the period should be counted in hours, not days. The court said that even if Yoon had been indicted before his detention period expired, there would still be grounds to cancel his detention, citing issues with jurisdiction in the investigation. It agreed with Yoon's argument that the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials should not be investigating his alleged insurrection as it falls outside the office's jurisdiction. The court's ruling came 40 days after prosecutors indicted Yoon under detention on insurrection charges and 15 days after a hearing was held to review Yoon's request to have his detention canceled. Yoon's legal team welcomed the decision, saying that the rule of law remains alive in the country. It urged the prosecution to immediately direct the president's release. The court's ruling effectively paves the path for President Yoon's release if the prosecution either waives its right of appeal or fails to file it within the prescribed time frame. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump made his first speech to Congress since returning to power, with topics ranging from global tariffs to Ukraine. He also portrayed South Korea as a country with unfair trade practices. For more details on this, we have our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung here in the studio. Welcome, Bo-kyung.
Thank you for having me, Tami.
So, Bo-kyung, let's start with Trump's remarks, how he called some countries over what he called unfair trade practices. Walk us through the remarks.
Sure, Tommy. Trump claimed South Korea imposes higher tariffs on U.S. products than Washington does, even though the U.S. helps Seoul so much militarily and in so many other ways. He did mention other countries on Tuesday as well regarding such unfair trade practices, saying India charges the U.S. auto tariffs higher than 100% and that China's average tariff on American products is twice what the U.S. charges China. He then mentioned South Korea.
And South Korea's average tariff is 4 times higher. Think of that, 4 times higher. And we give so much help militarily and in so many other ways to South Korea.
His words, of course, added to growing concerns that Trump's new administration could take trade action against South Korea, including his plan to impose a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports on March 12th, and reciprocal tariffs which are set to take effect from April 2nd.
But Trump did not give specific evidence for his assertion, right? Is it really true that South Korea's average tariff is 4 times higher than the United States.
No, Mr. Trump was actually wrong, and South Korea's trade ministry was quick to rebut this. According to the trade ministry, Washington and Seoul have eliminated tariffs on most goods under the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement that took effect in 2012, putting the average tariff rate on imports from the U.S. to Korea at 0.79% in 2024. This rate is set to drop further this year in accordance with an annual tariff reduction plan stipulated in the agreement. In reference, the ministry added that the tariff on imported manufactured goods from the U.S. is 0%. In terms of what Trump said, the ministry assumed he would have been referring to Korea's most favored nation treatment tariff, which stood at 13.4% in 2024, which is 4 times that of the U.S.'s 3.3%. But this rate applies to WTO member countries without bilateral agreements and thus is not applied to goods imported from the U.S. Though Trump's words had no grounds, it seems clear he is considering trade relations between the two countries as an uneven playing field. Many experts say he was trying to argue that Seoul has been enjoying a trade surplus against Washington. Of course, thanks to the tariff elimination effects of the FTA, South Korea's trade surplus with the U.S. has grown at an average annual rate of 27.5% over the past 3 years, reaching a record high of $55.7 billion, which is around 81 trillion Korean won last year. But one expert pointed out that the U.S. should not only look at the trade surplus. Tammy Overby, a senior advisor in the East Asia and Pacific practice of Denton's Global Advisors Albright, has said in an interview with local media that South Korean companies have significantly boosted foreign direct investment in the U.S. She added the surplus could have risen as South Korean companies expanded their manufacturing facilities in the U.S. for semiconductors, autos, batteries, and solar panels. The export of intermediate goods to these factories has also increased.
Bokyung, Trump also mentioned the LNG project over in Alaska and also his plans to revive the shipbuilding industry as a leverage. Now, to begin with, what is the LNG project in Alaska?
The project has an estimated value of $44 billion and it basically aims to build a nearly 1,300-kilometer pipeline to transport the natural gas traversing Alaska from north to the south. Natural gas would then be cooled to a liquid state and be exported to major LNG importers such as Japan and South Korea. It has long been delayed due to environmental concerns and its enormous cost, but now Trump is pushing it again with investment from major importers in mind. Listen to this.
My administration is also working on a gigantic natural gas pipeline in Alaska, among the largest in the world, where Japan, South Korea, and other nations want to be our partner with investments of trillions of dollars each.
Trump is basically using the project as a bargaining chip for South Korea amid mounting pressure over Trump's new tariff plan. Japan was quick to respond as Tokyo and Washington have reportedly been discussing forming a joint venture for the project, including during a summit between Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba and Trump last month. South Korea is keeping an eye on the project as well. Minister An Deok-kun recently visited the U.S., where he agreed to operate a working-level consultative body in 5 areas, including the Alaska project. According to An, because the project looks like being a high priority for the U.S., Seoul could be interested in participating. That could alleviate U.S. concerns by increasing imports of liquefied natural gas to Korea and reducing the trade surplus with Washington.
And among the 5 areas, shipbuilding was included too, right?
Right. Shipbuilding industry can also be one of the most valuable negotiating chips for South Korea to help ease trade pressure, as Trump vowed to resurrect the industry. He is planning to offer special tax incentives to boost the industry in the country, especially amid Washington's concerns over China's expanding warships. And South Korea is emerging as a key player. We will have to wait and see how the two countries boost cooperative ties in this area.
All right, Bokyung, thank you so much for that comprehensive report today.
Thank you.
And U.S. President Donald Trump this week granted temporary tariff exemptions for Canadian and Mexican goods covered by the North American Trade Agreement until April 2nd. As part of efforts to protect American industries from economic harm, our Ian reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump has granted temporary tariff exemptions for Mexico and Canada on goods that are covered by a trade agreement between the three nations until April 2nd. Trump said Thursday that a previously imposed 25% tariff will be paused for about 1 month under the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, which according to a White House official covers about 50% of Mexican imports and 38% of Canadian imports.
It's just a modification short term because I didn't want to hurt it would have hurt the American car companies if I did that.
This follows the announcement of a decision the previous day to grant a 1-month tariff exemption on cars imported from Mexico and Canada. Trump's tariff plans, which went into effect on March 4th, have caused the stock market to drop and raised concerns among U.S. consumers. Trump pointed to a failure to deal with the trafficking of drugs, particularly fentanyl, into the U.S. as a reason for the tariffs. And according to the White House, Thursday's changes were made after discussions between Trump and Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum and talks between Canadian officials and the Trump administration.
Also, we discussed drugs, and they've been working much harder lately. Do you notice that? On people coming in and drugs, and we've made tremendous progress on both.
A White House official expressed hope that Mexico and Canada will make enough progress on the fentanyl issue so that the matter can be removed from the agenda, allowing the U.S. to move forward with discussions on reciprocal tariffs. April 2nd is also the day Trump plans to apply reciprocal tariffs on countries that charge import taxes on U.S. goods. Also on Thursday, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent strongly defended the Trump administration's tariff strategy. Speaking at the Economic Club of New York, he said access to cheap goods is not the essence of the American dream. Bessent said that President Trump is willing to take bold steps to achieve his trade goals with an aim to rebalance the global economic system. Ian Hee, Arirang News.
The U.S. and Ukraine are returning to peace talks to end the Ukraine war and continue discussions on a minerals deal after a summit between the two countries' leaders ended up being a dramatic bust-up last week. President Zelensky announced on Thursday that he will be visiting Saudi Arabia to meet Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and also meet up with senior U.S. officials in the Middle Eastern country to continue talks on ending the Ukraine war.
With fewer options and more pressure on the battlefield, and also from Donald Trump, Ukraine has no other options but to negotiate.
Professor Cho added that Trump may continue to reduce American presence in Ukraine and urge European nations to do more and take more responsibility to bring an end to the war. And then Trump may push for a ceasefire deal, he says.
So Trump has already said he's open to direct talk with Vladimir Putin and claims that Russia is now ready to negotiate with the United States. So he might try to secure a ceasefire without forcing Russia to withdraw from its occupied land. And if Ukraine is pressured to accept a deal where Russia keeps its force in its occupied territory, Ukraine could remain at risk of a future Russian attack.
Now, Trump and Zelensky could ink the deal as early as next week. But experts stress there is one big question, whether the deal will bring real stability or just ease the conflict, leaving Ukraine in a weaker position. What were supposed to be regular joint drills to bolster security ended up in a nightmare as several bombs accidentally fell on a residential area in Pocheon City on Thursday. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
Several civilians were injured after bombs fell on a residential area in the northern city of Pocheon, Gyeonggi Province on Thursday morning. According to related authorities, bombs had fallen on Pocheon's Dogongri at around 10:04 a.m., destroying several buildings. Bombs came from the Joint Air and Ground Force live fire training exercises between South Korea and the U.S. that were being held in connection with the annual springtime exercise, the 2025 Freedom Shield, slated to kick off on March 10th. The exercise involved the Korean Air Force, Army, and U.S. Forces Korea taking place at the Seungjin Fire Training Field in Pocheon, with the Air Force deploying a total of 13 combat aircraft, including the F-35A, F-15K, KF-16, and FA-50. No fighter jets of U.S. Forces Korea had been deployed. 8 Mk-82 general-purpose bombs were wrongly dropped from 2 KF-16 fighter jets, 4 from each. This confirmed by the Korean Air Force through a text message to reporters. Mk-82 bombs are used to destroy structures such as buildings and bridges and reportedly have enough power to create a blast crater 8 meters in diameter and 2.4 meters deep. They are dropped using an unguided method rather than a GPS-guided system. The wrongly dropped 8 Mk-82 general-purpose bombs landed outside the shooting range in a non-designated area. The impact points of all 8 bombs were confirmed, and the Air Force said there were no unexploded bombs. It has reportedly established an accident response committee to investigate the exact circumstances of the incident and assess the damage. The Korean Air Force added that it deeply regrets the civilian damage caused by the bomb drop and expressed sincere wishes for the quick recovery of the injured. It further noted that necessary measures, including compensation, would actively be carried out. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korea saw a rather modest rise in income growth last year amid a weaker Korean won against the greenback. The economy grew 2% in 2024, in line with what the Bank of Korea expected back in January. Our Moon Hae-ryun has this report.
South Korea's gross national income per capita edged up by just over 1% last year due to the Korean won's depreciation against the US dollar. Preliminary data from the Bank of Korea on Wednesday shows that it grew by 5.7% in the local currency, but when converted into US dollars, $36,624 reflects a much lower growth rate of 1.2%. South Korea's GNI per capita first surpassed the $30,000 mark back in 2014 and continued steady growth before dropping in 2022 due to the weakening of the won against the greenback. The Bank of Korea stated that it is estimated to have surpassed that of Japan and Taiwan once again.
According to Taiwan's statistics agency, Taiwan's GNI per capita stood at $35,188 last year. As for Japan, our calculations based on official data and exchange rates suggest that it was slightly above $34,500. Like the year before that, South Korea's GNI per capita is believed to be higher than that of both Japan and Taiwan.
Comparing GNI per capita among countries with populations above 50 million people, the BOK noted that only 5 had higher figures than South Korea. The central bank cautioned that exchange rate fluctuations could affect previous forecasts.
The IMF projected last year that South Korea's GNI per capita would surpass $41,000 in 2027. But given recent exchange rate volatility, this estimate requires further observation.
Meanwhile, the country's gross domestic product, which doesn't include overseas earnings, increased by 2% year-on-year. This is the same as the preliminary estimate given in January, but some revisions to sector-specific growth figures were made. Exports, government spending and imports were revised upwards, while construction investment and facility investment figures were cut. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
China held its annual political meeting, better known as the Two Sessions, this week, where it set an economic growth target of some 5% this year, despite after taking into account yet another possible trade war with the U.S. Here's our Choi Soo-hyung with the details.
The Chinese government has set its economic growth target for this year at around 5% for the third consecutive year. On Wednesday, at the opening of the National People's Congress in Beijing, Chinese Premier Li Qiang said that China needs to focus on job stability, risk prevention, and improving people's livelihoods. He also announced that the Consumer Price Index increase rate for this year is around 2%, the lowest in 20 years since 2004. Premier Li added that the goal is to improve the balance between supply and demand and keep overall prices within a reasonable range. Experts say that China is focusing on boosting domestic demand due to increasing uncertainty in global markets.
In a planned economy, the government always says they will try hard to make it happen, rather than just expecting it. This means it will work hard to achieve that 5% growth target. It also means China will actively boost domestic demand.
China has also increased its fiscal deficit ratio to 4% of GDP this year and raised its research and development budget by 10% compared to last year. Experts said this means that Beijing will expand government spending widely in response to Trump's tariff policies.
Beijing is focusing on boosting domestic demand and increasing government spending. With the possibility of higher U.S. tariff on Chinese goods, China is taking aggressive measures, such as raising its fiscal deficit to 4% of GDP.
China's defense budget will also rise to 7.2% this year. China has increased its defense budget for 4 years in a row, with a growth rate above 7%, even as economic growth has slowed, meaning military pressure on Taiwan is expected to rise. At the meeting, it was mentioned that there would be active participation in multilateral organizations such as APEC and the G20 to strengthen trade cooperation, as well as continued efforts to promote a free trade area among South Korea, China, and Japan. Cha Su-hyung, Arirang News.
Over in Spain now, the annual Mobile World Congress took place, and the 38th edition was all about AI, as well as its power that bridges all industries and our daily lives. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin filed this report from Barcelona.
Can you tell me about Arirang TV?
I'm sure there are lots of great entertainment on your TV channel.
Meet Amira, UAE telecom operator Etisalat's humanoid robot. Her realistic natural conversations are powered by generative AI as well as AI-driven natural language processing that enables her to understand speech, recognize emotions, and generate human-like responses in real time. But Amira is just one of the many ways this year's Mobile World Congress is showcasing how AI can be applied across various industries.
This year, AI is sort of like spaghetti. It is everywhere. And I think that's a very healthy sign that we're embedding the new technology in other technologies.
An expansion of AI into various domains and subsequently into everyday life is also reflected in the wide range of startups representing Korea at MWC.
This year at MWC, a record 147 companies are showcasing their innovations in the Korean pavilion. You can see how widespread AI is through those companies as AI makes its way into both daily life and various industries.
Beacon, for instance, showcases how AI is revolutionizing healthcare by using AI-powered diagnostics to analyze skin and scalp images to detect potential issues and provide personalized recommendations for treatment and care. Most recently, it has expanded into beauty with a personal color analysis feature where AI determines users' ideal color palette simply by analyzing a photo of their face. I gave it a try myself and was categorized as winter, which includes cool tone shades. And over in the pet industry, PetNow uses AI and deep learning to scan and recognize unique biometric markers of animals, such as a dog's nose print, to help pet owners register and track their pets more easily. The company believes that the use of AI in the pet industry is going to continue evolving.
Of course, I mean, our standalone app is already harnessing multiple layers of AI, and there are also numerous AI pet tech companies, especially in Korea, where everything's fast, everything's cutting edge, and the pet industry itself in Korea is very booming.
And this widespread presence of AI is generating multiple new revenue streams as it creates diverse business opportunities.
AI's true meaning is people's lives and people's culture, K-culture, and with the especially sports and music. This is the true beauty of the technology can impact the daily life.
South Korean telecom giant KT's AI-powered sports announcer system, for instance, breaks down language barriers at sports games by utilizing advanced real-time AI translation technology.
I'm your stadium announcer, Sumi. Thank you for visiting here. Show your support with loud cheers for the team.
Live commentary and announcements like this during a game are captured and translated into multiple languages in real time. This will make local sporting events more accessible to a wider global audience, which will subsequently open the door to increased viewership, new sponsorship opportunities, as well as lucrative licensing deals for the telecom company. But AI is now generating revenue not only from the entertainment side of everyday life, but also from its integration into homes, a sector traditionally not seen as a high revenue earner for AI. KT's AI-based home service platform leverages the AI-powered IPTV set-top box Giga Genie to connect various smart devices within homes, enabling paying subscribers to control appliances, lighting, and security systems through voice commands.
Genie, I'm home. AI is no longer a distant concept or for a select few. It's seamlessly being integrated into healthcare, stadiums, and even our homes, transforming our everyday life. Yusujin, Arirang News, Barcelona.
That is all we have for this weekend. Thank you so much for staying with us and enjoy the rest of your weekend wherever you are.